Hello, welcome. In the School of Business, we're embarking on an effort to use consistent language in assessing student work. As you go through this presentation, please be sure to have open the associated handout, which is posted on the site. In this presentation, we'll begin with the rationale. Why is the School of Business launching this initiative? We'll then describe the assessment criteria so that you know what language we'll be using to assess communication and critical thinking. Finally, we'll discuss implementation. How might you use this language in your assessment of student work? Why use common language for assessing communication and critical thinking? Most faculty assess based on similar criteria. For example, most of us want students to clearly articulate what their main point is. We want them to substantiate that point using sufficient relevant evidence. We want them to communicate in a way that is easy to follow. However, because we all communicate these expectations in slightly different ways, it's not always clear to learners that many of their faculty members are in fact getting at the same points. In short, using a common language will help learners understand their patterns as critical thinkers and communicators, since they will begin to see similar comments in multiple classes. It will also help them understand your feedback. Significantly, the vocabulary you will be introduced to in this presentation is taught to the learners in their foundational skills, argumentation, or communication class at the beginning of their program. If you use this vocabulary to assess, it will be meaningful to them. Finally, common language should help you as an instructor articulate your message more efficiently, since learners will have a foundational understanding of what you are getting at. Let's look at the assessment criteria. As you can see from the handout, there are 8 criteria for assessing communication. First is the introduction. At a minimum, you want the introduction to provide a clear summary of the paper's structure. You should not be surprised while reading the paper of where the argument goes. As the faculty member, you might ask yourself, does the introduction articulate the document's organization? The next criterion is document organization/sequencing. As the faculty member, you might ask, is the document appropriately sequenced without unnecessary repetition of information? Number 3, paragraphing/topic sentence. You might ask yourself, does this paragraph have a clear and unified point, and can I easily identify it? Is this point expressed in a topic sentence when appropriate? Next would be concision. You might ask yourself, do I need to read more sentences or words than necessary to get the writer's point? Number 5, clarity. Do I need to read any sentences more than once in order to understand their meaning? Number 6, grammar and spelling. Do I notice any grammatical or spelling errors? And finally, referencing and citations. Are all external sources appropriately cited using Chicago style? You'll notice that the questions are framed so that you need not be an expert in communication or in grammar in order to assess against the communication outcome. For example, referring back to the criterion of clarity, it's enough for you as the faculty member to note that you need to read a sentence twice to understand it. You don't necessarily need to analyze the structural issues going on with the sentence or provide advice on how to fix it. Before reviewing the criteria for critical thinking, let's begin with the premise that claims must be substantiated with evidence. Most of the criteria I'll review in a moment can refer to either a learner's claim or their substantiation of that claim. For example, in applying the first criterion, relevance, to a learner's claim, you might determine that a claim is irrelevant if it does not answer the assignment question. In contrast, it's possible that a learner makes a relevant claim but does not substantiate it with relevant evidence. As the faculty member, you might therefore use the term relevance in 2 different ways, depending if you are applying it to a learner's claim or their evidence. As mentioned, in assessing relevance, you'll want to ensure that the writer's claims respond to the questions being asked in the assignment sheet. You'll also want to assess the relevance of the substantiation or the research that's used to support the claims. In assessing precision, you'll want to ensure that both claims and substantiation are sufficiently precise. Claims should be precise enough to be meaningful. They should not be broad, vague motherhood statements. Substantiation should not be vague. It should draw on concrete and specific evidence, be it from research or from case facts. In assessing sufficiency, ask, is there sufficient concrete substantiation, including research, to support the claim? In assessing accuracy, you'll ask, is all information accurate, or are there factual errors? In assessing comprehensiveness, you'll ask, are all relevant points included? For logic, ask, is the overall argument logical without logical fallacies? You also may want to assess on the consideration of differing views. You should feel confident that the writer has come to their perspective having considered other perspectives. Finally, is a criterion application of class concepts. Are class concepts applied as appropriate? There you have it, 16 criteria which you can use to assess communication and critical thinking. Note, however, that these criteria are not exhaustive. Communication and critical thinking are only two of the learning outcomes. Depending on which program you're teaching in, you may, for example, be assessing against problem solving or innovative thinking or global thinking. These criteria represent a minimum of what we want learners to leave the program able to do. They do not represent everything. Now that you understand what the criteria are, you're probably asking, but how do I use them in assessment? Although standard rubrics may be developed at a later point in time, at this point, the School of Business is not using them. Rather, it's suggested that you integrate this language into your own system of assessment. In other words, you shouldn't necessarily change what you're assessing. Rather, you should simply use this language to express what you otherwise would. We're taking this more open-ended approach for now because faculty across the School of Business assess in different ways. Allowing each person to adapt as needed should increase the odds that doing so won't be overly onerous. That said, by simply adopting common language, we will still be sending a more unified message to learners. Let's look at an example of how one faculty member uses this language. Here's an example of an assessed case study with comments provided by OB Professor Dr. Stephen Long. The comments on the right represent his original work, which he did before adopting the Common Language Standards. As you can see, he begins with comment A1. Making errors in case facts at the very beginning of a report diminishes the writer's credibility. Comment A2 reads, providing the readers some direction about where the analysis will be going will help set the stage. Comment A3 reads, while this is a good description of the software issue, to not acknowledge the WCB and fake accounts is to miss some key aspects of the case. Here's how his assessment would look when using the Common Language Standards. The first comment points to an accuracy issue. He might therefore add the word accuracy with a colon before his comment in order to clarify to the learner what the more generically defined issue is. The second comment points to a problem with the introduction. The third points to an issue with comprehensiveness. The learner has omitted key case facts. You'll notice that in this case, using the standard language means adding more words. You may therefore be asking, will using this approach add to my marking time and make marking more onerous than it already is? I sincerely hope not. While you may go through an initial period of adjustment, ultimately, this system should save time. For one, you don't need to include what comes after the colon throughout the paper. For example, if in this case analysis the learner were to continue to make errors in accuracy, you could simply write accuracy in the margin without explaining each instance. Also, assessing in this way can help save time in composing your summative comments at the end of the paper. By scanning the margin, you can quickly see what the most dominant issues are. This completes our presentation, which hopefully has provided clarity around why we are using common assessment language in the School of Business, what language we are using, and how you might use it in your own assessment. If you have any questions, please email me at amy.zadalka@royalroads.ca. Thank you.